Hi, Rachel here from The Confused Millennial, and today's video is presented by Lexington Law, your credit repair professionals, and I'm sharing my top tips for talking with your significant other about your finances. So when Eric and I got together over 6 years ago, we were in very different places financially. I had a stacked emergency fund, no debt, and a spotless credit score, while Eric, on the other hand, was spending $50 a day on coffee, eating out, fancy newspapers, and shoe shines. True story. He had around $7,000 in debt and a credit score of about 640. And so while I was waitressing or in night classes every day of the week, he could be found out at the casino or being a little too charitable with friends and acquaintances. And that kind of concerned me because I watched my parents struggle with the financial talk. My dad was an entrepreneur who lost a lot of his money and spent most of my middle and high school years trying to get it back, while my mom supported us on her one income. And very similar to them, my dad had an affinity for his expensive newspapers and shoe shines, while my mom pinched every penny. I knew I didn't want to end up with that type of disparity in a relationship, and so while they loved and supported each other and things always worked out, it just seemed like a lot of unnecessary and avoidable tension that if they would have just had a conversation with honesty, love, and communicated clearly, this whole financial issue could have been avoided. So, how did we go from almost making my parents' mistakes to a fully transparent, supportive financial relationship? We talked a lot about everything. And today, I wanted to share with you some of the points you can bring into your own financial relationship conversations. So, tip number one is going to be start generally. It's a lot easier to begin talking about a taboo subject like money when you start super generally. So for instance, was money something that was ever talked about in your house or not? Did you ever pick up on any financial tensions? If so, what were those about? What are the money messages you received growing up? Here's also where I personally would ask about any family history of bankruptcies, gambling, or addiction, or anything like that, if you don't already know it. And you can begin to really transition things a little bit deeper by asking about what are your beliefs about money? So what do I mean by that? I always believe that money comes easily to me because I know how to work for it. I'll bust tables, I'll clean toilets, I'll do whatever I need to do, within legal reason, of course, to make a buck. And I think that if your partner is struggling to go deeper on these types of questions, you can always throw in some really fun ones too. So I came across this question from my friends at Lexington Law on their blog. If you received a $1,000 gift or bonus, would you spend it, save it, or do a combination of both? I think when you get to kind of go into those fantasy questions, you can see a lot about your partner without putting any of the pressure on them about their beliefs and maybe some of these things that they're not used to talking about. Tip number two, talk about your future goals and lifestyle. Again, this is a great way to begin easing into the conversation by making sure you're on the same page about your future lifestyle goals. So think about what you have in mind. Are you aiming for monthly massages and facials? Are you trying to get that 6-bedroom mini mansion? Or are you somebody that really prefers to keep things low-key and minimalist while saving up for a retirement that'll allow you to travel around the world? Speaking of retirement, what age do you hope to retire at? Do you believe in an emergency fund, investing, or are you somebody that prefers to eat out every night of the week? This is one of the biggest areas right off the bat to ensure you guys understand each other and are building towards a similar future. My friends at Lexington Law also came up with a few other questions that I really like for talking about the future. Do you both plan to work? What's the most you would ever spend on a home, car, or piece of clothing? What should you do if you disagree about spending? That last one is probably one of my favorites because it allows you to create a game plan before there's even any problems. Tip number three, spending versus saving style. Now we start to transition into a little bit more of the current state of your finances. This is a great way to get an idea of where the person is currently at without being like, how much debt are you in? Don't do that. Instead, ask about their beliefs on spending versus saving if you haven't already, and how are those playing out in their day-to-day life. And maybe find out if they're working off a budget. For me, I saved, and rarely spent any money. I literally pinched every penny. I personally believe that big box retailers aren't going to help me retire. So why am I going to invest my money into them versus myself? I'd rather skip buying new clothes for an entire year and instead get a regular massage for my overall well-being. With that said, there was a time I wouldn't even get a massage, so I had to really ask myself, what was my overall health worth? Did I really need that extra $150 in monthly savings, or was the cost per happy for me worth it? Cost per happy is a great little formula when evaluating your spending style, by the way. Basically, it means figuring out what the cost of an item or experience is, and then dividing that by the number of hours it'll actually benefit you. So if you spend $150 on a massage, but it alleviates your tension headaches and restores your energy for 2 weeks, that's a solid investment because it's more than just 90 minutes on a massage table. And that's something that being with Eric really taught me. And if you guys aren't on the same page with saving versus spending, maybe get some further clarity by asking, when is it an okay time to have fun with our money? Tip number 4, your current state of affairs. So now that you've covered all the money messages you've picked up, all of your hopes and dreams for your future lifestyle together, how you're currently spending your money, it's time to actually get into the nitty-gritty about the current state of your affairs. So, do either of you have any debts? And that includes student loans. Have you started saving for retirement? What's the status of your emergency fund? What types of bank accounts or investment accounts do you guys have? What's your credit score? The reason I bring up investment accounts and bank accounts is because you may be able to help each other out here. For instance, I've always been pretty savvy when it came to bank accounts. I've never paid a monthly fee, and it wasn't until a few years ago that I realized that's not the case for a lot of people. So by talking about these types of things, you can really help one another see where they're paying hidden fees, if that can potentially be avoided, or if there's any other leaks in the budget that you guys can help plug up for one another. It's also important to understand what debts exist and the status of an emergency fund is at this stage of the game. That way you guys can really be supportive of your decisions going forward. When I found out about Eric's financial situation, I immediately had him stop taking me to fancy restaurants and started cooking and doing date nights in. That was an easy compromise for me since I actually prefer those types of dates, and I knew his bank account didn't need the strain of trying to impress me. We still would have fun, but we would do it our more adventurous dates based on what we could find on deal sites rather than paying full price. And remember that it's important to ask for help from people like Lexington Law Firm to raise your credit score and get out of debt quickly. Finances are often a big cause for strain in a relationship and just overall stress on ourselves. So it's essential you work together as a team and enlist experts when needed. It's simply investing into both of your financial futures and also putting your relationship in a much healthier place. So those are my tips. I think breaking it down this way really removes a lot of the guilt and shame around money. It allows you to see where you're at and how you got there by reflecting on different things that you picked up in childhood. And it allows you to see if what you're currently doing really aligns with where you want to go in life. When you talk about this stuff openly as a couple from a place of love rather than accusation or judgment, it can really change the game in supporting one another since you're a team after all. And I've talked to Eric about this too, and what he's said about it is living within his means and making these big shifts has really led to a lot more satisfaction in his life. Whereas before, it was this fleeting sense of happiness from buying an item that was really expensive or dinner, and it just kind of left him empty once the experience was over. Now he's able to really focus on his future and building that lifestyle he wants, and he just feels a lot more comfortable and confident, and he even allows me to talk about things like this, which I know a lot of couples don't want to talk about money in such a public way. And at the end of the day, you guys are really a team. So once you've gotten on the same page about your money views and where you're at, it's still important to keep having conversations like this and being transparent about what's happening with your finances. Again, if you need more help, there are experts out there like Lexington Law who can alleviate a lot of the stress by helping you get out of debt and repair your credit score. That's one of those areas where it's better to invest in yourself rather than those big box retailers because it's going to alleviate a ton of stress down the road and unnecessary complications. So I'll leave the details with how to get in touch with Lexington Law in the details box below.